What is the point? What's going on, everybody? One of the best questions I've ever got is, what is my purpose? What is the purpose? What am I supposed to be doing here? It's a question that we all ask, I think, quite often, frankly, especially if there's a big pivotal point in life or when jobs feel like they're overwhelming and we just can't handle it anymore and it seems like a dead end. So this is a two-part explanation here. We're doing part one today. And the two parts, just so you understand, our purpose versus my purpose. Those are the two big caveats because there's a system that we're all within. There's a big basis for just what's the point of mankind versus what is my specific purpose for being on this earth and why was I born. That second one is so exciting, but so is the first. And the beautiful thing about it is the Bible clearly tells us exactly what that purpose is. Now, when we're talking purpose, a lot of times what we're really looking to know is not so much why were we created in the first place as to what are we supposed to be doing? What's my part? Because I can't do anything about why I was created. I'm just here. Welcome to me. Same thing with humanity. I can't really affect whether or not it's created or not. But what's really important is that it actually operates the way it's supposed to. Just like if you go out and buy a cell phone, you really want it to be able to make and receive calls, to be able to scroll through media for hours on end. If it can't do all of those things, you're going to be a little bit frustrated. It's not doing its duty. It's not doing its job. And therefore, you're going to see it as having no purpose or having a purpose other than what you had intended. So it's important for us to know, what the heck is our purpose? Now, when we're looking at our purpose, this is such a cool question because the Bible clearly states our duty, just as mankind, as human beings, the point of us. It's going to be in my all-time favorite book, or one of them I should say, Ecclesiastes. Now, this book sounds really drab and sad sometimes, but that is because the author is going on this magnificent search to figure out the point. What's the point of all this? And who better to do that than King Solomon, who was the author of this book. He is the smartest, most influential, and richest person of his day, and arguably for significantly long after that. The reason it's so important that he's the one going after this isn't someone with limitations. This is someone that can literally do whatever they want, whenever they want, however they want. And he's been blessed with this discernment from God, so he's able to actually ponder and consider this question realistically without coming up with these false narratives. So when he goes through this, he does find some really important key details that we need to make sure we remember before even getting into the purpose part, because we are so quick to jump over the what's good and go straight to the what must I do. We want to put those two as they're exactly the same. It can only be good if it has the defined purpose it must have. Well, that is true, and that is an aspect. There may be things that are good that don't necessarily have purpose. Thing one being, does anyone have a favorite stuffed animal or something just sitting in their house? There's not necessarily this grand purpose. It's just a good thing. It's a fun thing that you have. That goes a little beyond just stuffed animals, though. He goes into things like work, that dead-end job that we might struggle with. It's actually good to enjoy work, to pursue something that gives you joy. That's a good thing. He does say, the best thing past this whole purpose narrative, best thing you can do, eat, drink, and enjoy your toil. He loves the word toil. This thing that we have to do day in and day out doesn't have to be bad. It might feel purposeless, but it doesn't have to be a bad thing. We should enjoy our time on this earth that we have instead of just slaving away at something and then dying and leaving it for somebody else, never getting to enjoy it at all ourselves. So now that we have that under, the next point is this purpose narrative that he ends the book off with just so casually that it just about drove me insane when I missed it 3 times in a row reading through this book, trying to figure out why this is even here. He just seems to be ranting and annoyed. But his conclusion is so simplistic and so easy to follow. The duty of man is to fear God and follow his commandments. That's it. Those two things. And that sounds really intense and driven when you just look at the words on the page. So I want to go back behind them. What does it mean to fear God? This is a question that has frustrated the church for years. Is it respect and that's all? Is it fear and that's all? What's it supposed to be? And the joy of the Bible is when there's two things that are both completely provable and you can't disprove the other one, they're both right, even if they seem somewhat contradictory. There's a way they work out together. On this particular point, the way I have loved to explain the fear of God and what's most impactful to me, putting it in incredibly human terms so that it's a little more tangible, you've got this respect side. I respect my elders. I don't necessarily fear them. I don't usually feel any sort of threat or anything like that. And yes, while that can exist, more often than not, I simply respect my elders because of what they've done in life, because of their wisdom and their years of experience. I'm not really threatened. On the other side, we've got the schoolyard bully, who, yes, I am incredibly threatened by. That's a person who has inspired fear in me, we'll say. But I don't respect them in any way, shape, or form. So what happens when we mix these two things, when we actually have fear and we actually have respect, one in the same? The best picture I can get is a Navy SEAL. Now, in my mind, these are the most incredible individuals that I can really picture. And as an American citizen, they help me feel safe and sleep at night. But if I'm sitting in a room with them, I'm going to be terrified because of what I know they're capable of. Now, that doesn't mean they're just going to get up and, no, not at all. What that does mean is they could do that. And I'm scared of the potential of that happening, but I know it's not going to happen. At the same time, I also deeply respect the amount of work and effort it's taken them to get to where they're going. This is an insanely difficult job, arguably one of the hardest there is. And the amount of devotion, commitment, and sacrifice it took to get there is insurmountable. So I can have both of these things at the same time, but when I'm sitting in a room with them, I'm not cowering. I'm not, the traditional view of fear where I'm just terrified of them. But I'm also not just respecting them. That's not it. It's both at the same time, but because they're on my side, because I know they fight for me as an American, I know they've got their own personal reasons, but because of that overarching theme there, I feel safe. And so in this fear God narrative, we don't get just fear or respect, we get inspiration. God is an inspiration and something that we want to be more like on a day-to-day basis, something that we look up to. And so in fearing God, we are choosing to acknowledge his power, to acknowledge his sacrifice, to acknowledge everything he's done and everything he's going to be doing, and look to him for the answers, for the safety and security as we move forward. Part 2 in here, we have follow his commandments. This sounds so old school. It sounds frustrating. It sounds like, I guess I better get my legal book out and memorize the Bible. No, that's not really what it is at all. And in fact, the law of God, his commandments, can be summed up so quickly and easily by, you guessed it, my favorite verse: love the Lord your God with all of your heart, soul, and strength. Now, wait a minute, don't forget part 2, love your neighbor as yourself. Now, when we look at those two, the reason we get to use them as the big overarching theme is because Jesus quite clearly states that the entire law and prophets are all based on this. So when we're thinking about the commands of God, yes, there are individual ones that separate out, but they're all going to come over this or under this umbrella of love the Lord your God with all of your heart, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. So in following that, we are then capable of solving the entire follow commandments equation without necessarily having to know each and every individual one. Of course, yes, it's good to know more, but we can take what's going on in our lives and apply it through that lens of, am I loving God? Am I loving myself? Am I loving my neighbor with everything that I have? And when we don't know how to do that, guess what? That's where the fear God narrative comes back in. We get to look up to God as our inspiration, as our source of how in the world to do this and where in the world to go from here. So, by doing both of these things, we are capable of accomplishing the duty of mankind. Now, how do we fit into that? It's coming soon. So, if you've enjoyed this, go ahead and like and follow for more content, and check out my latest book, Abide, available on Amazon.